how happy is the blameless vessel's lot. The world forgetting by the world forgot. Eternal sunshine of a spotless mind. Each prayer accepted, and each wish resigned.
Is there any risk of brain damage?
Well, technically speaking, the procedure is brain damage, but it's on a par with a night of heavy drinking. Nothing you'll miss.
What won't I miss? It's time for a little something. I forget. My notes say I'm Professor Robert E.G. Black, and I'm here with Austin Pryor from Malkovich Minute. And it's time to discuss Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. But I'm being erased, or I don't know.
But they're erasing me, and I have no memory of this.
Right.
That's what you usually say.
No, I'm reading the line, but I'm like, I don't want to play it the same way every time.
No, but I'm just trying to help you because I know what you're going through. I got a note from a company that says you're going to be deleting everybody in the Movies by Minutes podcasting community, and I want to be supportive of your decision, but I worry for you, and I think, of course, I'm just a memory of a conversation you're having with me, so you're going to lose all this information. But
so is that note, your name on the screen, is that like a memento kind of note I left for myself? Nathan is a prick. Are you Nathan?
That's well, that's from a memory that logically shouldn't have been deleted yet, because if it's going in reverse order. But who knows how these things work?
Maybe it's random. Who knows? I don't know what I'm trying to erase.
Plus, as I say, I am just a memory of Austin Pryor. I can't give you new information or clarify anything that you don't already know.
So it is memento.
Yeah.
There's no new information. Good thing I have notes on something called Minute 23.
Here we go.
Which we're in an apartment building mailroom scene that we've already seen. It is blurry in the background, Joel in a bed in the foreground, and then right as this minute begins, it cuts so that he's in the scene.
Yeah.
But the other half of it is blurry.
So I have the honor of being present for the very first instance of this effect. Well, there's a number of different effects. There's all these transitions, and there's all these funny effects of super focused Joel in the foreground and the background being way blurred out. And of course, Gondry being Gondry achieved all of these effects in camera with only very little CG and other post-production kind of work on it. And I was wondering, do you know specifically how they did this shot? Because I've got two ideas.
Well, actually, let's hear your ideas, because this is a very simple one.
Okay, so this is, when I'm watching it, I think that it's projected and that they synced up the frame rate of the projector and the camera, and that Jim Carrey is standing physically there in front of it, and that everything else is being reshot. Is that right? Because I have another guess.
In this scene, no, they do use that at points later, I believe. And that is also a trick that I talked about last week on Groundhog Day Project, because that was in my time loop with the week. Orpheus, they used a trick like that, where they projected behind so that the previous scene could play the same way, but one of the actors was out of it and experiencing it differently.
Yeah, so then the other thing that I saw in the bonus materials on the Blu-ray was this idea where they get Jim Carrey to stand in front of the camera, and then behind him this huge frame with this kind of sheer material, and Kate Winslet and everybody else and the street and everything is on the other side.
Yeah.
And so that produces this great effect of everything being blurry and the memory disappearing. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay, so that's how they did this one.
I'm pretty sure that's how they did this one, because their frame with the plastic film in it is pretty big.
Yes.
And so the edges of it are out of the frame. They just have to keep it between the camera and whatever's at the back.
Yeah.
And it's a very simple trick.
Yeah. And even the footage I saw on the Blu-ray is like the camera pulls back because they finished the shot, and then the camera keeps going and the guys holding the frame just stop.
Yeah. They're just holding a big frame.
And you can see the whole thing. And even now that you can see the artifice of it, it's still working. It's still amazing.
It still works because it's still separating him from the action.
Exactly. And it's so simple and beautiful. And
it probably worked really well for him because he is,
because
it's blurry to him.
Exactly. And that's what Gondry was saying, that it produces these kind of spontaneous effects rather than working on his stupid blue screen or,
Right.
And it's just, there's several things in this movie that I assumed were post-production and weren't.
I think the only real CGI is used when the street corners reverse, where she's walking away from him.
Yes.
Because the signs reverse themselves and disappear.
Yeah.
And when the bookstore disappears toward the end. The blanking of the books was CGI.
Yeah, and some of the bookstore disappearing is real because it's just lights being turned off.
Well, and this Carrie and Rob's house, I believe, was a set they built in the back room of the bookstore.
Oh, yes.
So that they could do a real transition to it later.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I think there must be a few more because the effect of Elijah Wood having two backs of his head and no front
his face
would have to be.
No, Elijah Wood can really do that.
He can really do that. Wow, that is some commitment. He's method.
And weirdly, this is the only film he's used.
Yeah. And then there's the bit where the kind of metal fence or siding or whatever disappears one by one.
Disappears.
I think
that's an easy CGI trick too.
Yeah.
Just erasing something in the dark.
Yes, yeah. Although having rewatched some of Michel Gondry's music videos today, the amount of stuff he does physically is just unbelievable. Like I watched the Hardest Button to Button music video from the White Stripes, where he has White Stripes playing with like every time she hits the kick drum, she skips from this drum kit to another identical drum kit that's right beside it in a row. And it's boof, boof, doof,
Nice.
doof, doof, doof. And then it's just her. And then when the doodle it, like an amp appears with, Jack White is standing there with the guitar and the amp, and each time he plays the riff, it's another amp and another. And he did it by making a load of drum kits that are identical and renting a load of Marshall amps that are identical and just having Jack White move around. And it was just so compelling to look at. And it is so, all the janky imperfections, the way, like there's outdoor parts of it and the trees and the shadows are changing. And every time their hair changes between shots because it's all separate, it's all editing tricks.
Yeah.
Everything that's wrong with it is right with it. And it is what makes it work. It is so gorgeous. He was made for a movie like this because he is obsessed with and plays with time and space. It's all about scale.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much actually scale in to do with things being giant versions. Like he has this obsession with giant.
Well, he's got memories as a kid where he's under the table. You go.
That's the scale stuff. Yeah, and all the forced perspective. Yeah. I knew there was something. Yeah. So totally. And there's the amazing scene of them in the giant bath, which is actually the sink. And it's fucking so funny and silly looking and just perfect. And it is that weird thing of being able to remember how small you were, because we have some kind of barely conscious memory of it. But yeah, so like this is, in a way, it's kind of sad that Gondry has never, as far as I know, I haven't seen absolutely everything he's done, but he's never really kind of hit these heights again. Has he?
No.
Yeah, like I don't think he's made something as amazing as this.
It's weird that neither Kaufman nor Gondry really ever got big, because they both are so weird. But this movie kind of takes the best of each of them.
Yes.
And so it totally works.
Yeah.
But when they go back on their own, like Science of Sleep is not a very audience-friendly film like this is. I think this is more friendly to the audience.
Yeah, it does. Like, I mean, I suppose a wide audience includes a hell of a lot of people. And when we went to see this in the cinema, there were definitely some people who were there to see the latest Jim Carrey romp and were just kind of talking through the movie.
There's just enough rom-com to work for some of them.
Well,
some of them aren't going to
not this crowd.
They're not going to like it.
So, no, but it does have a kind of a wider appeal. But I just think, just even artistically, I don't think he's hit these heights again, which is, it's kind of sad to say. Because, like, I still haven't watched Human Nature, but it's just, I hear it's not great. And it's kind of a misfire from Gondry.
It's got interesting ideas, but I don't remember it being that great.
Yeah. Like a friend of mine said 10 minutes worth of good ideas in a 90-minute film or whatever, So I kind of, that's the notion I get, which means I just never kind of get around to it. And then what else? He made Science of Sleep, as you mentioned. Be Kind, Rewind is definitely fun and has a lot of good sweeting of films in it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really hang together as a movie that well.
No. It's a more commercial idea, I think.
It is. It should have worked better. Yeah. And then there's Green Hornet, which I hear was just bad.
I've forgotten that he was involved with that. So I don't even remember how. I know I saw it.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
I remember bits, but it went right out of my brain.
Yeah. It's sad because I just do think he's an incredible talent. And then he has done this thing on Netflix with Jim Carrey, and I watched the first episode of that where Jim Carrey is playing like a Mr. Rogers kind of.
Oh, Kidding.
Yeah, that was really good.
Kidding is another thing.
Was really good.
I watched the rest of it recently. Okay. I had only watched the first episode or two. And I really liked it, but it is not audience friendly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You have to care about this eccentricity and perversion and darkness,
So, like, this is,
or you're out.
yeah. This is strange though. Like, you're suddenly revealing this care for an audience that I wouldn't imagine you have. Since when do you care about
No,
what
it's not
audience?
that. It's not that I have it. It's important to know whether or not a movie has it.
I got you.
The problem isn't whether you're friendly to the audience or not. It's you need to know whether you're friendly to the audience or not.
Wider audience. Yeah.
Don't pretend your film is big mainstream
Yeah.
blockbuster if it isn't.
Yeah.
Some little filmmakers think too much of themselves.
Yeah, and there's also like the problem where the director knows exactly what it is, but the marketing team get a hold of it and like, well, we can chop these bits out and really push the rom-com angle. And it's like, oh no, but then people are going to hate my movie because you'll have created false expectations. And they're like, well, you want butts in seats. This is how you do it.
Right. Ex Machina is a thriller that is going to include violence and action.
Yeah.
If you trust the trailer.
Yeah.
Eternal Sunshine is a fun little romantic comedy romp.
Yeah, with not too weird. Don't worry, it's not too weird. Just come and see it, please. I promise.
One point, he yells upset in the trailer,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But you don't know why.
Yeah. And speaking of Kaufman and trailers, there's a great trailer for Adaptation, which uses Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie. And I think it's a great trailer. And I think it does communicate the madness of that. But maybe it kind of trailer makes it feel a bit faster or so, but it works. It just communicates how mad it is and how much in somebody's head you are when you're in, and it's just like, and it focuses on, this is Charlie Kaufman. And it just builds and builds with the music that you can just imagine, and the editing it's just a really well constructed trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Adaptation minute coming in 2025
or thereabouts.
God, I better get to work on it now. I've put a date on it.
Yeah, so we just talked about what's going on in the scene so far. Is that film screen is between Jim Carrey and I forget the actor's name on the other guy. This is only scene, so don't need to bring it up again. But character's name is Frank.
Yeah,
and he's about to get erased. So bye, Frank.
Well, he's got two scenes, but they're both the same scene.
Right, they're the same scene.
Yeah,
from a couple different angles, and then he's out.
Yeah,
and he's talking about his Valentine's Day. He only gets them from his mom. How pathetic is that? Mm-hmm. So it's the same dialogue we had last time. I like though that because they've re-blocked it, to put that film between it. Joel is not in the scene that was there before.
No.
He's experiencing it, even though he's replaced himself.
Yes.
Like quantum leaped into himself.
Yeah.
He is looking around like someone who knows something is happening.
Totally.
More than he was before.
Yeah, because he's re-experiencing it. And what is interesting is that I think, as far as I know, they avoided the temptation to create any changes to the lines of dialogue. I think he's saying exactly what he said in the previous scene.
Yeah, I was going to put it together and see if the timing was even the same.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't think that matters as much.
It's the exact words.
As long as he does what he does.
And I think the idea is it's so fresh in his memory because the process is working with the most recent memory first and working back. So it's very fresh in his memory. So it wouldn't have changed yet. Of course, that doesn't really track to reality necessarily. You could have very good recall of some small encounter you've just had, or you could have just broad strokes of whatever somebody said.
Right.
I just kind of expect every time that I watch the movie, I expect to notice some little difference in the way the dialogue is, but I think it's the same, yeah.
He can hear Stan and Patrick in the background, but it's just vague and distant enough. We can't really tell what they're saying. But basically, he's in the moment of them erasing this memory. And we don't know that yet.
Yes.
If we're watching this movie with no knowledge about the plot, we don't know what's happening. We know he just took a pill and some people went inside.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so... I'd love to have, speaking of, I think you spoke with another guest about this recently. Would you like to erase your memory of anything? And you both arrived at exactly the conclusion that I would too, which is I'd love to erase my memory of a given movie or TV series or whatever and re-experience it, as long as I could switch the memories back on afterwards so that I could compare the two experiences.
Compare the two. Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just, okay, you get to watch it all over.
You're replacing it. I don't want to replace it. I want to have a new version of it.
Unless you had a very bad first viewing of something where you got it spoiled horribly and you just love to restart. But I'm one of these people who I hate spoilers, and I even hate like soft spoilers. And the first 10 minutes of any movie, I'm kind of going, yeah, great. This would definitely be just that little bit better if I didn't know the premise of the movie coming in. Imagine I didn't know. Imagine I didn't know. How good would that be? And I have watched films knowing nothing about it, and I love it. I just, especially, obviously, if it's a good movie, it works even better.
I think I tried to get someone I didn't think they'd seen From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, right.
And I wanted to show them that without letting them know that there's going to be vampires.
Yeah.
Like they think they're watching a Tarantino movie, and now it's something else.
Yeah, and like it's weird the way they marketed that film as well. No, they were not shy about telling you about the change. You know what I mean?
No.
It was weird that they didn't hide.
They needed to go like Alfred Hitchcock Psycho levels, where we're not telling you what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not even going to tell you the name of the character that Salma Hayek's playing, because that's going to confuse you.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't really like From Dusk Till Dawn, but it would have enjoyed it more.
Every time I've seen it, I disliked it a little more. Like I have problems with Tarantino the farther I get from him.
Yeah. I can understand.
But at the time, I loved that switch.
Yes.
Because I love the idea of switching genres, and especially if it's abrupt.
It's great. Yeah. But again, for my first time seeing it, I had seen so much coverage of it on MTV. I was like, boy, I would be having.
Yeah, I read about it in Fangoria. I knew there were vampires.
Yeah. And I'd be like, boy, I would be having an amazing time right now if I didn't know about this change. You know? Yeah. So it's just that thing about spoilers was my point of like, I would love for every good movie to just be introduced with like, this is the year it came out, this is the title, and maybe the director, and that's it. That's all I need to know about any film. And when you sit down there are certain people that when you sit down with them to watch a film, you know, the opening credits are starting and it's just like the vibe of the film is kind of unfolding with the music and whatever else is going on. And then they'll say, what's this about anyway? I'm just like, why would you ask that now? If you don't want to watch it, that's fine. Walk away. But like you've just said, you want to watch the movie. I thought we were all just going to watch the movie. Do you want me to pause and tell you? Do you want to read the back of the DVD? We're like, what? Why?
Like, give me 20 minutes. The movie will tell you what it's about.
Exactly.
Without ruining too much.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like you know nothing about a movie and you're watching it. That is optimal. There is nothing to improve. You know what I mean? Like you've got the perfect situation. But yeah, it's a rare privilege. I suppose if I see the movie Men, I skipped your podcast when you started talking about it the other day because I won't listen to that until I've seen it because that's a perfect opportunity. Yeah, but that's fine. That's fine. But I'll catch up. It's a perfect opportunity because I know who directed it and I know it's a new movie and that's all I need to know. I don't even know who's in it. I'm sure he'll do something interesting. It's called Men. That's a very zeitgeisty word that gets me thinking about what it might mean, which is perfect.
Yep.
And then take me on that journey. And that's great. And don't tell me anything.
There is something that I think the movie might benefit from people knowing.
All right.
Is that it is quite graphic.
Well, yes, I did know that. I did. Luke Allen was posting online about
that. Doesn't ruin what's going to happen, but you should know
that. Yeah.
Like, don't take your kids to see
and
it.
Sometimes
and I don't say that often.
Right. Yeah. And I think that has me worried because I'm a bit of a wuss when it comes to, I don't have much of a tolerance for graphic violence. I mean, I can take it, you know, if I feel like I'm in good hands with the director, that, you know, the director thinks I need to see this. And if it doesn't feel like he's just trying to gross me out or whatever, I'll be okay with it, you know?
Well, I think there's a little of that too.
Okay. But anyway, it's Alex Garland. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. There are sometimes kind of anti-spoilers like that. There's like The Rise of Skywalker.
Sometimes just knowing there's a twist is bad.
Yeah. But there's like an anti-spoiler where sometimes knowing something about it going in is actually a good thing. Like The Rise of Skywalker is not a great film.
Oh, yeah.
And probably the worst thing about it is the hokey thing of just bringing back the Emperor. And I'm glad I knew that going in because I was able to just forget about it and enjoy the ride.
And they kind of made sure we knew it ahead of time.
They made sure we knew it.
Which worked.
Exactly. Yeah.
Worked better than if they'd surprised us.
Worked better than if they'd surprised us. And it's still stupid and they still shouldn't have done it. But, you know, it made it more enjoyable.
Or they could have done it better like Dark Empire because Dark Empire was awesome.
I don't want.
He was cloning himself constantly.
I don't want a clone of the Emperor.
That's Dark Empire is such a good story.
I've never read it. I suppose like when I think of Dark Empire, which I haven't read in fairness, but I just think of like, and maybe this is a subsequent story of, but the Luke. Is that in Dark Empire?
From The Last Command. That's from The Last Command. Okay. That's the Timothy Zahn trilogy, which came out about the same time.
Yeah, okay.
The convergence of the Timothy Zahn trilogy and Dark Empire is what got me back into Star Wars much more. And then I read every Star Wars thing that came out for quite a few years.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I kind of got sick of them when they had so many books coming out that some of them just weren't very good.
Yes. Yeah, I've learned bits and pieces about the EU. I had a kind of a brief dalliance with it because a guy that I was getting to know him was one of my few kind of Star Wars friends back when it was the dark days when there weren't that many Star Wars fans around, and he was like, oh, I have all these books. I've read them all. You can have them. And he gave me this stack of EU novels. And of course, we're like, I'm not a reader. I now know that I have ADHD and dyslexia, but I didn't know at the time. I just thought at the time that I hadn't met the right book yet, I suppose. Because I have read some books, you know what I mean? But I didn't know to what extent it was a challenge to me. I just thought I was kind of busy doing other things. And so I got this big stack and I was like obsessed with the chronological order of them. And it's like, oh, there's all these different authors working together and creating this whole continuation and everything. And I read like a good few chapters of the first Timothy Zahn one. And then I read
Heir of the Empire,
and then The Courtship of Princess Leia, because that's set before it. So it's like, okay, well, I'll watch Return of the Jedi. And I read like Shadows of the Empire.
Or Truce of Bakura, which is set right after Return of the Jedi.
And Courtship of Princess Leia.
The thing that turned me off, listeners, if you read these books, was Vaughn and McIntyre's The Crystal Star, because so many things in that book are just wrong. And several of them contradict the other books going on around them.
Yeah.
Because they've gotten to a point where the authors weren't really communicating with each other at all.
Yeah. The EU got too big too fast, and it suffered from that kind of. I don't, looking back and listening back to what people say about it, and with bits of it come up obviously, and Star Wars Minutes when they do a Wikipedia Legends tab deep dive, and it sounds really stupid. And it's kind of the kind of thing that, like, if I had read them at that age, if I had whatever kind of treatment for ADHD or whatever would have helped me out, maybe I would have that love for them now. But there's absolutely no point in trying to capture that now as a 42-year-old man.
No, because now they're ignoring them. It's like, what's the point?
Not just that they're not canon anymore, but just like, come on, that ship has sailed. They would be fun to read. If I could erase my memory and erase the like neurological phase changes that I've gone through.
Yeah.
Bring my brain state back.
Or at least know which are the best things to read.
Yeah.
If anyone does want to go back, you read Tales of the Jedi.
Okay.
It's a comic book. Dark Empire, comic book.
Okay.
Dark Lords of the Sith, the 12-part miniseries that came after Tales of the Jedi, because Ula Keldroma and that whole storyline was great. Nomi Sunrider's awesome.
And what about the Kevin J. Anderson trilogy? Is that any good?
Anderson's, which ones were Anderson's?
Jedi Academy.
Oh, Jedi Academy, great ideas, but they're young adult books.
Okay, yeah.
Jumping in from editing in case any big Star Wars fans are listening and realize what I just said is wrong. In a few minutes I realize it. I'm mixing up the Jedi Academy trilogy and the Young Jedi Knights.
And then the bad things that happened is Crystal Star came out and it was ignoring a bunch of stuff. And then you had Michael P. Cubitt McDowell's trilogy, which had wonderful ideas, but was trying to be hard science fiction.
Yeah.
Which doesn't fit with Star Wars.
That's an awful lot of it.
And it was too dense a writer. It was interesting, but it wasn't Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And then Crystal Star they had ongoing storylines with a new character and like new love interest for Luke that had been in multiple books.
Yeah.
And it was like this author just didn't care about that.
Yeah.
And I liked that character. Cassandra, I think was her name. And they basically just mistreated that character and made her less important, maybe just because they liked
Mara
Jade too much from the Zahn trilogy. And I love Mara Jade. She was awesome.
Yeah.
And I did go back to Star Wars when Chewbacca died and the Yuzong Vong invasion happened, because the Yuzong Vong are awesome.
Oh, really?
My version, you haven't met them in your D&D game, but my other D&D game will include them. My version of D&D's Sarkrith are basically the Yuzong Vong. Magic doesn't work around them because they can't access the Force.
Yes. So the Yuzong Vong are from outside of the...
They're from outside the galaxy.
They come in Truce of Bakura, don't they? Or Courtship of Princess Leia?
No, they come in I forget what the first book is called.
They're one of the few things I've actually read about. I remember reading...
Truce of Bakura kind of is the reason they come in, though, because Truce of Bakura mentions the fact that the Empire has things out at the edge of the galaxy guarding against other stuff.
Okay.
And that it is useful to keep some of the Empire's machinery around, because there is other stuff bigger.
There's always a bigger fish.
but then they don't really come in until much later.
Interesting.
And then that led to long series like New Jedi Order is way too many books. iJedi is pretty good, but New Jedi Order, I was like, this is too much.
And what about the Rogue Squadron and those kind of space battles?
The comics were good. I never really read the novels of those because they had Rogue Squadron books as well.
Yeah.
Their comics were pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Tag and Bink comics were always pretty entertaining, but they're supposed to
be funny, yeah.
And
why don't I have a Star Wars podcast?
I'm surprised how much I remember about some of that. It bugs me sometimes on Star Wars Minute when they're like a recent episode, they're talking about jousting on speeder bikes. Like,
you're like,
that happened.
Come on, we did it. Yeah.
That wasn't even in the long Clone Wars show. That was in the short Clone Wars show,
which they never
everyone
got
should have
through.
seen.
They were doing a review week of that on the Patreon episodes for a while, and they just bailed on it because they were just not having a good time.
The short one is so energetic and exciting, and it includes the World Devastators, which are straight out of Dark Empire.
Does it? Right. How do they come from? Yeah, I really like those ones.
Those
The what you call Genndy Tartakovsky ones.
Yeah.
But they are very actiony, and especially the way that Pete and Alex tried to approach it on Patreon episodes was like, this is way off we're getting now. But the way they approached it was like, it's so piecemeal, and you know, they're watching it and a minute at a time. There's no dialogue, and you're kind of waiting for something, and it's not very movies by minute friendly, despite being divided into tiny chunks.
Right. It was 6 minute shorts, and then they kind of tie together.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. The episodes were like literally 1 minute long in the first series, I think, and then 3 minutes long in the second series. Like, they were just these mini blips that were in between shows on Cartoon Network or something. And anyway, that is just, I go and watch Samurai Jack. It's amazing.
It's about memory, you know, for us. This is why we talk about movies, because things like this stick in our heads.
Perfect segue.
I still remember the author's name of the Star Wars book that bothered me.
Yeah.
You know? But I've met Kevin J. Anderson, and I couldn't remember which books he wrote.
Wow, you met him?
Yeah, I met him at an X-Files convention.
I was going to say the X-Files.
Because he wrote the first two X-Files novels.
Ground Zero. And
maybe he wrote more, but those were the ones I had read.
Yeah. The Ground Zero, nearly read that too.
Where were we in the minute? Oh, I would note a specific other practical thing they do, because we're getting the dialogue of the scene we've already seen. Frank is louder when he says, "You're lucky you have Clementine, Joel."
Yes.
So the key to why this memory is getting erased is louder.
Yeah,
because that's the thing that bumps up on their machine, and they have to pin it down.
That's the emotional core the memory
of this memory. He brought up Clementine, and that made Joel, this is why this is the memory that gets erased.
Yeah, great.
And then as he continues saying what we already heard about making reservations at a restaurant or end up at Mickey D's, it's getting darker back in that back half of the shot. He's disappearing. Yeah. Joel's not paying attention, even though he does answer. And I also noted the blocking is different. Frank walks away.
Yes. Yeah.
In the first version, Joel is walking away while Frank is talking.
Yeah.
And Frank has to go after him.
Yeah, and he's like, I've got to go.
Because Joel is not that Joel. He's in the moment.
Yeah.
He's in the new version of the moment.
Yeah.
And then we hear Carrie before we're introduced to, and I don't think we hear their names for a while. Rob and Carrie. This is Joel's sister and her husband.
Is that who it is?
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She's Joel's sister. Oh man, I love these two so much. And these are kind of like, this is what made me realize, I don't think I ever kind of registered that this movie isn't really a comedy.
Oh no.
And I've always thought it's a comedy.
It's very funny, but it is not a comedy.
Well, to me, if it's because I've had this disagreement a couple of times with is Being John Malkovich a comedy to you?
No, I think it's sort of the same, because even its most comedic moments are usually the most horrifying things happening.
Yeah, because to me, like in my book, Being John Malkovich is out and out a comedy. Like it has other elements, but it is.
Yeah, I mean, much more than this.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So this is like, I think because my way into Kaufman is through comedy, like, and I just, he's so weird and he's so meta and all of that. And like, to me, the first thing I think of is the humor, and like the weirdness and the meta-ness is completely bound up with the comedy of it.
Right.
But like, you know, there's in the first half of Being John Malkovich, especially, there's just bits that are just sketches, you know, and they're to do with like comic misunderstandings and all of this.
Even how melodramatic his puppet shows are is funny because he takes himself way too seriously.
And it's the comic mismatch between what a serious, earnest artist he is and how trivial what he's doing, and the fact that he's getting punched in the nose for being lewd with his street theater.
We're doing a sex scene on the street.
That's comedy in the true sense of like the funniness of the ideas. It's what's driving the story, and the characters are preposterous people, and it happens in a comedy universe that wouldn't make any sense.
Which is the setup here, but we started with a character who's miserable.
Yeah.
And the tone doesn't play it as happy.
Yeah. And in this minute, there's no real jokes, but this scene gets funny with David Cross and sorry, what's the other actress name? She's amazing. I love her in the you know, handful of things I've seen her in. I should know her name. I'm doing this show. Yeah. So they just are so funny together in such an understated, not a very constructed comedy way. He's just saying something to anger her and get under her skin, and then Jane Adams, and she just throws all the laundry on him because it's just the nearest thing to hand. Sorry, that's next week's minute.
That's next week.
Yeah, but it's just like the dynamic between them, and watching this today and laughing out loud made me realize, oh wow, that's the first thing I found funny in the movie, and I've always loved this movie. And
any comedic beats earlier were painful.
Yeah, but I think the one that's just quite funny is Lucidius the Emphatic. But you have, in your interpretation, have run that through with Payne as well, because that's your idea, which I find very compelling. He doesn't know any of the constellations because it's been erased, because it's close to Clementine. But yeah, like I just have it in my head as a Kaufman kind of comedy, and I haven't watched the rest of it in ages. But I like the way this movie works for me is I've seen it so many times that I always, you know, I've been able to listen to the podcast and know what bit you're talking about, and I go around the house all day singing every Thursday, and I need your loving because not that you even mention the song, but you talk about a man crying in a car, or you know, he's throwing the cassette out or whatever, and so like the song, I can just hear the clink clunk, clunk, you know, the organ chords, and just the film is just like I didn't need to rewatch it for this because I know it so well, but I did rewatch the first 23 and a bit minutes here to just refresh and see where we are and what we know so far in the movie, and it's great. But just surprisingly dramatic and way fewer jokes than I thought.
Yeah, and we don't know much because now we're back. We're 4 or 5 days ago now from the present. He says Valentine's Day is 3 goddamn days away. The beginning of the film was Valentine's.
Yes. Yeah.
I want it resolved. I'm willing to be the one to resolve it. You know, he's a nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I call her and she's changed her number.
Yeah.
And then he's describing it. And I like this because basically the memories are combined.
Yes.
This scene with Rob and Carrie is combined with the scene he's describing to them, which is him at Antique Attic, you know, little knick-knack store or whatever, buying a necklace. And writing out a card says, Clem, I'm sorry, love Joel.
Yeah.
As he tells them, so I walked over to Antique Attic, you know, to get her something. I thought I'd go over to work, give her an early.
I'm sorry, what is that name? It's not antique. He's saying antic.
No, it's Antic. There are stores called Antique Attic. There's a lot of them.
Okay.
In New York, all over the place. I couldn't find Antique Attic was a real thing, and he definitely pronounces it Antic.
Yeah.
I don't think we see the outside of the shop.
Well, does it say it in the script? Is he saying antique strangely, or
in the script it's antic?
Okay, it is.
No, it's A-A-N-T.
Wow, strange. So it's just, I guess it's just a weird gag of like, I'm not going to use the brand name, I'm going to use something very similar to the brand name.
Or it might be some in-joke that Charlie Kaufman had with himself, where he always finds antique stores to be so cluttered they're antic and weird and crazy, and he liked that.
Crazy antics. Okay, because I rewound that a couple of times. I was like, antic attic. Okay, yeah.
And then we come back to Robin Carey's, and he's holding that gift. I don't think he was holding it in the previous shot, which is or it was below the frame. But now we see it.
Yeah.
And it's that gift he was just talking about. So the memories have merged back again. And he says, and you won't believe it, she's there with this guy, this really young guy. And she looks at me like she doesn't even know who I am. And this drifts into that scene because the memories are all connecting.
Yeah.
Which is what they're doing.
So this makes me need to know, and I don't want to put you on the spot for your research. This makes me need to know the ages of all three of these actors, because I dare say Elijah Wood might be more age appropriate for Kate Winslet than, because Jim Carrey is a good bit older at this point than Kate Winslet, isn't he?
Carrie's born in 62.
Carrie was born in 62.
Winslet
Elijah
is-
Wood was born in
Winslet is born
1981.
in 81.
Yeah.
And he's definitely closer because she was born in 75.
Okay. So he is 6 years her junior.
That is weird. I don't think of her as being older than me.
Yeah.
I think because I saw Heavenly Creatures, the film where she's a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I always remember her as being younger.
Yeah.
I knew Elijah Wood was because I remember him being a kid in films.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He's only just.
So yeah, she's
younger
definitely
than I.
closer in age to Patrick.
Yeah. And this really young guy. And he's like, how much older than Kate Winslet?
That would be 13 years.
13 years. Wow.
62 to 75.
60.
Which in
75.
movie terms means they're basically the same.
Exactly. Yeah. Because of the lopsided, fucked up expectations that have been created for us by Hollywood.
Yep. Because this young, exciting girl with weird colored hair is going to totally get involved with you over Elijah Wood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't worry. You still got it, big guy. The movie seems to say.
But in the scene, we see where she works. It is the Columbia campus bookstore, which is a Barnes & Noble.
Yeah. And so is this this is product placement, isn't it?
Saying its name earlier is definitely product placement. And we do see the sign.
Yeah.
But it might have been something with permission to film there, since Barnes & Noble owns the campus bookstore.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Both entities have to agree.
Yes. And so it is actually on location.
Yeah. And the location might be where she's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Columbia campus isn't that far from where they live.
Was it in the script? Was Barnes & Noble's mentioned?
That it's Barnes & Noble is in the script, yes.
Interesting. So
I believe. Actually, no, I think in the first draft it says Borders.
Borders. Okay. So they asked Borders.
So
Borders
it may have
wasn't
switched because
interested.
they had a chance of where to film.
Yeah.
Maybe she specifically does work at Columbia campus's bookstore.
Yeah.
The location is what we see.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so they had to go with Barnes & Noble
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it is. Plus, Barnes & Noble has their name big on their inside of their store.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're going to see it.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. That's interesting. Do they?
They do.
Yeah. I suppose some shops do have that inside.
Barnes & Noble does.
Remind you where you are. Yeah.
We still got a Barnes & Noble here in Glendale, and they have their name inside the store.
Yeah, it's kind of a reversal as well, because back then they'd have been just like, oh, it's just a big corporate chain store. Now it's like, oh, it's a surviving brick and mortar bookshop. It's like, oh, wow, protected. It's the little guy.
This movie's actually just early enough that Barnes & Noble is definitely doing okay.
Yeah, they would be. Yeah.
Like Amazon hasn't really taken over everything yet, but they do exist.
Yeah, people would have been predicting the demise of brick and mortar bookshops by this time. Yeah.
And from Clem's perspective, it's just she works at some chain store that what she calls herself a book slave.
Book slave. Yeah. She's a little bit insensitive. She's showing her white privilege. Slavery. Really, Clem? You want to talk about slavery?
Oh, yeah. Or that's just how Columbia campus runs their bookstore or Barnes & Noble. In the script, her hair was supposed to be magenta in this scene, which would have, I think, confused audiences because we wouldn't know where we are.
Yes.
And I think they want us still to not know what the order of events is. And so her hair is the blue that we already saw with the roots showing.
Yeah.
Because this was only a few days ago.
Yes. It was only a few days ago. Yeah, I've never actually laid out the chronology. I've always kind of satisfied myself that it hangs together.
I believe it does.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, and when I'm watching it, I have enough of the, this is before that, this is before that. I never have kind of laid it all out, but I'm always kind of, you're catching up as you go, and it always kind of clicks. But I would love to kind of just do, I'm one of the many projects that I do entirely in my head and just kind of get all of the satisfaction of task completion just by imagining doing it. Well, I'll never do it.
Right.
But there's lots of movies and TV shows that I want to do a chronological cut of, a la Memento, because
Memento be easy. You just
Memento's done.
Chunks.
It's on the DVD as an extra.
Oh, that's right.
And so, the cool thing about it is, like, it's only frustratingly, a couple of people have said this about Memento, where it's like, a guy said to me before, it was like, yeah, but if you ever watch it, it's on the DVD. You can watch the whole thing in chronological order. It's shit. And he was saying it in such a way as he thought that was somehow exposing that the film was actually shit. Did you only think it's good because of the way it's edited? And it's like, but the way it's edited is part of the film.
That's the story.
The story of the film, because it's an incredibly clever way to put the audience in the same position as the protagonist of not knowing, just walking into a moment. when you show it chronologically, it's very interesting as an exercise, but it would never be a way to watch the film your first
Right.
time.
It wouldn't be good to
I mean,
watch.
it's just a guy sitting on all of the black and white interstitial sections, which go forward in time in the film, are the first thing you see, and you see them all in order, and they're just a guy sitting on a bed talking to someone again.
Which on its own,
which is on its own, is
not a good intro.
You would never make the film that way. So just the idea that it somehow like exposes, shock, the film was shit all along. You got fooled by good filmmaking.
Put this movie in chronological order.
Yeah.
It's going to get really weird. And of course, it won't make sense because his experience is not the same chronological order as what we see.
Yeah. So what you would have to do if you wanted to do a chronological cut of this is like some sections of this film are objective camera. We kind of see the camera as an omniscient narrator and we take it for real. Yeah. And then huge chunk of the film is just all of these memories. And all the memories come first because they start with like Joel being a little baby and everything. So there would have to be, I think you would kind of have to put like, in my mind, when I do this, it's very academic and it's not trying to create a nice narrative movie at all. It's just like, these are all the scenes in order.
Yeah.
And so you would put a thing up on the screen that says everything here is highly subjective and is not doesn't represent like an omniscient narrator. It's just these memories. And so you would show all the stuff of him being a kid. And then you would kind of catch up and bring all the way up to, scenes like this. And then you're transitioning into the real life stuff, the real world stuff. And I would like to see it all played out. The other chronological cut that I should have mentioned yesterday is not so much chronology, but I just love to make a version. And I don't know if you've ever discussed this or thought about this for Groundhog Day. I'd love to watch Groundhog Day with all of the loops cut out. So I
did that.
You did it?
It's on Vimeo.
Amazing.
Yeah, I called it Rita's Groundhog Day. It's basically the day before the loop and then the last day.
And the last day. Yeah.
And so this is what Rita knows of film.
Oh, fantastic.
It doesn't flow as its own story, but it does show you.
It sheds light on exactly that. I'm so glad I asked
all the bad things he did in the middle.
Yeah, it's so perfect that you did that because I've had it in my head when I rewatched it last year. I was like,
the transition is not very good because I didn't know how to put a new music over the cue, so it just kind of fades out of one and into the other.
Oh, that's fine. Like I said, this is a cold academic study. It's not meant to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just what's there. Luke made a version of About Time that's like that as well. I don't know if that's online anywhere.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I've never seen About Time, so
I made a shorter version of The Room too, but that doesn't take any time loops out. It just makes it better and shorter.
Makes it mercifully shorter.
Cuts out some sex.
Yeah. So chronological cuts. Anyway, I just wanted to interject with that.
They aren't meant to be their own films. If you're going to make them your own films, you have to really re-edit them and change music cues.
Absolutely.
And for the Room one, I tried to make it flow. I overlapped music from different sections because I knew better how to do that. By then.
Yeah.
I made the Groundhog thing a decade ago. I made The Room just a couple years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was a lot easier. I took the songs that play during a sex scene I cut out and played that song during the party later.
Okay, cool.
So that the song's still in there.
Yeah.
For people who love the really bad songs. I tried to make that one an actual film.
Yeah.
But you don't have to, especially when it's playing with time. You just want to see how they go. Like
sections.
when they go backward.
Yeah. And just maybe have a couple of titles on the screen saying that we're moving from memories to the real, in inverted commas, world. Yeah.
So the end of this minute is just that she looks up finally and says, he's not even in frame yet. Says, excuse me, can I help you find something, sir? We see Joel in the bookstore looking sad. There's a beat and minute's over.
Yeah, this is one of those moments that once you've seen the film loads and you know the trick and you know the premise, it's easy to forget how clever this is as writing, because this just looks like such a cold, mean thing to do. Can I help you, sir? And being completely professional and like she didn't know me, and she literally doesn't know you, dude. And it's just it's so like, because the Clementine that we know is capable of being quite kind of cutting and certainly fiery, and but this is a different type. This is a coldness that is just, it's so chilling, it's so mean.
Well, right, if you don't know the time, what's happening, this moment is
really hard.
We just saw her being so nice and coming on to him, and then they broke up and we don't know what happened, and she this is horrible from his perspective. This is awful.
Totally. And then we just cut in our minute here, we cut to Joel's reaction, and it's kind of like there's a bit in next week's minute that'll kind of continue from that, but it's almost perfect the way it cuts here, because it's just this lost, disbelieving expression on his face.
He's left
like,
just standing there.
What the hell am I supposed to do? And
Nothing makes sense.
Exactly. It's great.
And this is our cue of what's the end of the film is.
Mm-hmm.
We only know what it's like for the two of them, but also what does he erase of other people? What kind of friends did they only have when they were a couple?
Yeah.
But now they walk up to him and he's like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think we covered all of the Star Wars extended universe information that I set out to cover at the start of the night. And so that's everything. That line won't make any sense if you've cut all that out, which I presume you will.
And I realize now, actually, no, I'll keep that in, because I realized the Jedi Academy books by Anderson are not the ones I was thinking of. I was thinking of the young adult.
Jedi
Jason
High.
and Jaina are there. It's not called that, but yes. And there's a Wookiee friend of theirs.
Yeah.
And it's kids going to the school. The one you were asking about is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Because the villain in that takes so long to get him to be the bad guy that you know why he is doing what he's doing.
Cool.
Is that Luke is holding him back. And you get some of the best use of the Force. Star Wars Minute could talk about this in a recent episode.
Yeah.
They didn't, but because they pull a Star Destroyer out of space.
Right.
That takes a bunch of Jedi together, but they yank a Star Destroyer down.
Yeah. That's cool.
And the main dude, why am I forgetting his name?
Jumping in to say, Kip Duron. And what I'm about to say, sorry I said star, I meant the planet Yavin. Oops.
The Jedi who goes bad pulls a spaceship out of a star, because that's where they put it so no one could have it. And he yanks it out with the Force. And it is a great scene, because at that point he's like, fuck you. I'm more powerful than you can teach me to be.
Wow.
I'm doing what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So he's the Kylo Ren of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But a starship inside a star.
They had a ship called the Sun Crusher that it blows up stars. It's kind of like what they do with the
Starkiller Base.
Yeah, Starkiller Base. But it's this little ship that can go in and cause hydrogen, or the balance of stars. It was vague.
So
but it blows up stars. But in order to do that, it has to be able to withstand the pressure of a star. So because they can't destroy it.
I think they get quite hot as well.
Yeah. They push it into the star next to Yavin.
Yeah.
Because they're at Yavin 4. So they push it into that star so no one can get it. And he goes and pulls it back out.
Wow.
Because he wants it. He's got a revenge story that he's in the middle of, and he's the protagonist of his story.
Yeah.
Luke can't hold him back.
Interesting.
But that's all just legend now.
Yeah.
He lives now, only in my memories.
Were you pissed off when they decanonized it?
By then, I don't think I cared that much. If they had done that when the prequels came out, it would have bugged me.
Yeah.
Because that was while I was still kind of paying attention to the books.
You were invested
in the comics. By the time Disney bought it, I was done with that stuff.
Yeah. Because I saw early discussions when Disney announced they were going to make 7, 8, and 9. And I just saw this, these threads on, I forget what forum it was even on. It was like, who do you think is going to play Mara Jade, guys?
Right.
And I was like, oh, bless. Oh, poor you. You're in for a big letdown. There's not going to be a Mara Jade.
Yeah, you're not getting that.
Why?
You're getting whole new people.
Yeah, but it's I guess it's just so real to people. And it's just like, none of that is Lucas. He's not that. None of that's canon, And there's still argument over what was and wasn't canon. And and Lucas totally read all those EU novels and he totally believed it all. And it's like, no, he fucking didn't.
No, he signed off on them.
Signed off. There were merch. They were merch. And for any of them to be good is awesome. And if you enjoyed them, that's fantastic. And they still exist and they're not all out of print. And those that are can be bought secondhand. And it's not. You know what I mean? They're still there, But the fact that people got so kind of worked up about it, and all that really, because of the way canon worked, is none of them were canon in the first place.
Right.
There was this level called T canon, which was all the TV stuff, which was secondary canon to the main G canon, which is George.
Yeah, the Ewok films, the cartoons.
Yeah. So basically, the EU stuff wasn't demoted; it was just passed up for promotion.
Yeah.
It didn't get promoted to the same level of canon as the movies. It's just stated at at the level it was already at. I guess they stopped making things in that continuity is really what people were pissed off.
And then now with their TV shows like Mandalorian, they bring some of those details back
in bits.
Sort of.
Yeah.
But they got to find new ways to bring them in.
Well, it would be boring.
Just like the MCU has to reimagine how people become who they were in the comics.
Yeah, which is fun. Which is fine. It's fun.
And canon, this conversation's staying in because this is what Eternal Sunshine is about. It's just about personal canon.
Yeah, head canon.
What is part of your story or isn't?
Yeah.
You can ignore parts of it. Does that mean the other part's good? What about when there's a callback to some book that is now not part of the story?
And how much do
if
we
Shizor
like
shows up, what do we think of him?
That's when I read. I actually read Shadows of the Empire in full. But and how much do we create our own canon?
I want Trioculus and Triclops, both.
I know who those people are because of stupid fandom being amazing. I kept trying to bring it back into Eternal Sunshine, but you're just legend.
Well, this is the point. It's whatever memory you have, like his thing with constellations.
Yeah.
If I remove my context of Star Wars from my memory so I can experience the movie again, what do I think of those books? Or do those all get erased too?
Yeah.
In which case, what was I doing in the 90s?
Yeah, and what we do, and what about all
reading Star Wars?
Yeah, and all the conversations you had with friends about Star Wars, and all of the ways Star Wars has touched our lives would all be erased as well, and there would be so much collateral damage. It would be insane. The other thing I was thinking about, and here's a little thought about that's actually directly related to the movie, is that if a lot of the time when I'm listening to this particular podcast, all podcasts, but this kind of probably more than others, because it hits a lot of my buttons about like things that I need to go on rants about, and the stuff about memory and perception and consciousness and language and existence and existential matters and all of that stuff. So like one of the things is like when you asked, forget who the other guest was, Dick Tracy Minute guy, I think, was talking about.
Oh, Parker.
Yeah, Parker. Hey, Parker. So you and he had this discussion about whether you would want to actually delete any memories. And one aspect of that I was kind of, pausing and talking out loud to my car radio like an insane person was saying that like, I think if you did that in real life, if you could delete the like cognitive memories of some awful traumatic event, which is probably what people would choose to do, I don't think, from what little I know about trauma and how it works, I don't think the trauma would go away. I think the trauma is
I mean, if it was immediate, you could sort of take a lot. Yeah. But I think I said it in that conversation. I think you'd need to know that you erased something.
You would need to know that you erased it. But I also think
erasing the emotional core is maybe the key.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not erasing the memory.
Because I think that would be so slippery to get that emotional core. And I started thinking, I was like, oh, that'd be actually a good premise for a short story or something, which is like somebody deletes the cognitive memory of some awful kind of PTSD inducing as like an experimental treatment for PTSD. And they're still, wait a minute, that's the plot of, I just caught myself. That's why I was thinking, that's the plot of that fucking fiction podcast that got turned into an Amazon series with Julia Roberts. It's really good. I forget the name of it.
Oh, that is, some of that. Yeah.
You can maybe
I'll add the name in the edit.
Yeah.
That show was called Homecoming.
That's what, sometimes you have an idea and it's actually just a memory. Wow.
I was also thinking that's the plot of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Go on, is it?
A breakup is traumatic.
Sure. Oh, yeah. And he's depressed.
They break up. Their trauma is still there, which is why they latch onto each other again.
Yeah, and they're looking
that's why she can't be with Patrick.
Yes. Yeah.
Because she erased most of Joel, but there's still something.
The whole dynamic between Clem and Patrick is so brilliantly written and played and everything.
Oh, Patrick's a problem.
He's a huge problem, but it's so perfect because in real life, when nothing to do with, erasing memory or anything, he's a perfect kind of rebound boyfriend because there's no connection, but he's pushing hard and she's making herself believe that it can work. And she's, really forcing it. And you can see that, and the way there's no kind of chemistry between them, but he's contriving all these things. It's so perfect. And he's just, he's obviously, he's a problem, and he's like a disgust. He's a pervert,
Yeah, he was going to be an interesting conversation when we get to
but
him.
I love
actually doing
that aspect of the film, and you're just looking at it, and when the nature of their relationship is kind of made clear later on in the film, you just kind of, for Clementine, as an audience, you're just like, no, don't fool yourself, don't buy into this. And it's so, because everything from him is so hollow, and at some level she knows that. And it's just, I love that aspect of it, and I love the trick that this movie pulls off. And some people don't necessarily think this works, but I think it works amazingly, of like having the subplot of the characters, the people of Lacuna Inc.
Yeah, that could have even been more because there's so many interesting angles about what doing this,
It does to
how
people.
it affects them.
Yeah.
Like to Stan, it's just a job.
Yeah.
He's just the guy who does this technical work.
Mark Ruffalo.
To the doctor, he probably feels like he's doing this great, good deed for everyone.
Yeah.
Jeff said is probably free. And then Patrick is that guy who's like, how can I use this to make my life better?
Yeah.
And a little sleazy. We don't see much sleaze of it because by the time we realize what he's been doing, it's too late for him and he leaves the story.
Yeah.
And the doctor and Mary is horrible, but
yes. Yeah.
That's later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But but the fact that Mary's choices about sending tapes out to everyone and using her knowledge and the database that she has access to blow up the whole thing, and the way that kicks back to Clem and everything, is like, that's not easy to do. And you are towards the start of the film, you're like, why am I spending so much time with Mary? What is this? She's just the secretary in the thing, and I guess she must be a bigger character because she's played.
And then she gets drunk and high and silly.
Yeah, but I love all that. Great movie.
Yep.
5 stars. would recommend.
What other movie or podcast would you recommend, perhaps with you in it?
I think the 1999 Charlie Kaufman, Spike Jonze comedy, Being John Malkovich, is a corker. I think it's a belter. I recommend watching it 1 minute at a time, and along with me, come with me on this minute-by-minute journey, Malkovich, minute. And if you go to malkovichminute.net, save you typing out the whole thing, you can listen to the episodes there, and you can connect with yours truly on the various socials.
And before we go to the outro, I will say, to anyone in the future listening to this because you're doing the Movies by Minutes podcast about the last syllable of recorded time, I'm going to try to structure that film in minute segments so it cuts perfectly for your show.
That's great.
I'm thinking of you.
Oh, yeah.
And you can play this clip for free in your episode. Good
The
luck.
circle is now complete.
And I will be a guest or a recurring guest if you want. And I will betray everything I wanted to say with the film and say I was wrong. And no, that meaning wasn't there. I failed.
Oh, great.
I'll come up with new theories about how everyone's an
It's
android.
on the movie. Yeah.
Like I didn't
Yeah.
write.
Yeah.
I did. For legal purposes, I absolutely wrote the last syllable of recorded time.
Oh, this is great. I'm just seeing a cart and a horse, and they're just somehow in the wrong order.
That should have been the name of my podcast about it. The cart before the horse. This is the cart. That'll be my intro. Thank you.
There you go.
I'll be welcome to the first syllable. This is the cart before the proverbial horse. Anyway.
Thank you for listening. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Minute is just one part of an existential trilogy of podcasts. Tune in every Tuesday for Minutia Ex Machina, every Wednesday for the Groundhog Day Project Minute by Minute, and every Thursday for more Eternal Sunshine. And you can follow all 3 shows on one feed. Just search an existential trilogy. Follow this show on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Spotless Minute. This has been a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find links to more at lemmingdrops.com or join the Facebook group Lemming Drops Studio Tour. Also, you can support all my shows at patreon.com/lemmingdrops. Until next time.
This is it, Joel. Oh, God. It's gonna be gone soon.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know.
What do we do?
Look, we're going off. Enjoy it. Can you hear me? I don't want this anymore. I want to call it off.